Ah yes, the 1950s, a time of picket fences, perfect families, and rampant alcoholism. Enter baby John McAfee, born into a world that didn't even know it needed saving from computer viruses yet. Born in a psychiatric hospital in England, you already know this kid's life is about to go off the rails. That's basically like God throwing you into the deep end before you even learn to swim, holding a bottle of whiskey. And sure enough, John's dad was already several shots in by the time the birth certificate was signed. Now, most kids get a teddy bear and a pacifier. John, he's got a front row seat to his father's slow motion train wreck of a life, complete with a gun to his head. No, literally. Dad checks out early, gunshot style. It's like the McAfee household was running a live demonstration of trauma-induced psychosis. By the time John was a teenager, he had seen more dysfunction than a priest at a Catholic youth retreat. Spoiler alert, one of them gets a life of crime and the other just gets away with it. But hey, life moves on. McAfee lands in small-town Virginia, USA, where he grows up amidst a bunch of shiny, happy suburban kids who probably thought their biggest problem was choosing which sock hop to attend. Meanwhile, young John's already on his first name basis with the liquor cabinet, prepping for his inevitable descent into madness like a child prodigy training for the world's worst performance. He wasn't born paranoid, mind you. He just had the foresight to know the world was about to screw him.
Sup, mate? Here's my moment savings. I put everything on black.
Let's fast forward to McAfee's college years, and this is where things get even weirder. He's at Roanoke College, where he's probably the only guy in the entire place with a father's death story that could double as a Coen Brothers screenplay. Between the booze, drugs, and whatever else he was experimenting with, McAfee's brain was basically doing its best impression of Windows 98 on its legs, barely functioning, prone to crashes, and 100% unprotected. And just like a pedophile getting caught with his hard drive, young John found himself in trouble again and again. Except McAfee didn't have a folder labeled tax returns. He just had a growing list of vices. By the time he's got his degree, McAfee wasn't just another guy with a diploma. He was a ticking time bomb of genius, neurosis, and enough personal demons to fill a middle school gymnasium. Which, come to think of it, is where half those demons probably got their start. So while everyone else was graduating and planning their safe little corporate futures, McAfee was out there teetering between tech innovator and future fugitive. And all of this from a guy who couldn't keep his own life together. Ironic, right? By the 1980s, McAfee had finally found something to protect that wasn't himself. Computers were just starting to pop up everywhere, like acne on a teenager's face, and with them came a new kind of threat. Viruses. Now, most people just blame these viruses on their own stupidity, kind of like parents who accidentally had a third child. But John, he saw an opportunity. Where others saw annoying pop-ups, McAfee saw dollar signs and cocaine. Mostly cocaine. He starts McAfee Antivirus, and just like that, he becomes the self-appointed savior of the digital world. It was the ultimate con job. He essentially creates the fear, then sells the cure. Imagine a guy walking down the street slashing your tires, then offering to fix them. That was McAfee's whole business model. Your computer's got herpes? Well, don't worry about it. I've got the cure. And people, being the gullible idiots they are, ate it up faster than a Facebook grandma clicks on phishing links. Soon, McAfee's rolling in cash, more money than he knew what to do with, and trust me, that's saying something. Picture it, Silicon Valley in the 80s, money, tech, and bad haircuts everywhere. McAfee's not just part of the scene, he's, well, owning it. His company is one of the fastest growing in the country, and he's the tech world's new messiah. Though probably less walking on water and more doing lines of coke off a stripper's stomach, but hey, he's helping people sleep at night by convincing them their Commodore 64 isn't about to explode. With his paranoia fully weaponized now, McAfee pushes the idea that viruses are lurking around every digital corner, waiting to screw your computer harder than a sketchy file-sharing website. And people believed him, because honestly, most of them couldn't tell their RAM from their ass. They just handed them their money, and McAfee laughed all the way to the bank, and then probably sniffed half of it up his nose. By the late 80s, McAfee wasn't just some tech geek anymore, he was a full-blown tech god in the eyes of many. Antivirus software was now as essential as a condom in a brothel, and McAfee was the guy selling both, metaphorically speaking. His name was synonymous with safety, and yet the irony was lost on everyone, because behind closed doors, McAfee McAfee was living like someone who couldn't spell safe if you spotted him the S and the A. And while his users were busy clicking scan now, he was scanning for the next high or crazy adventure. Sure, other antivirus companies tried to catch up, but McAfee had already secured the crown and he wasn't letting go. It's still a well-known brand today. He knew the game, create fear, and sell the solution, rinse and repeat. By the time anyone figured out they didn't need to panic every time their screen flickered, McAfee was already 10 steps ahead, building an empire on anxiety. And the best part, the guy who created software to protect millions of computers couldn't even protect his own sanity. So by the time the 90s hit, McAfee is sitting on a mountain of cash so high that even Scarface would have been like, dude, maybe take it easy. But instead of kicking back and enjoying his riches like a normal megalomaniac, he decides it's time to take his paranoia to a whole new level. International Madness Edition. And that's how we end up in Belize, where McAfee builds himself a compound that makes Pablo Escobar's estate look like a toddler's playhouse. Now, keep in mind, this is Belize. It's a place where the average person's biggest concern is dodging tourists, and McAfee rolls in like he's prepping in a full-on apocalypse. He's got armed guards, surveillance systems, and probably more drugs than the entire 80s music industry combined. To call him paranoid at this point would be like calling Jeffrey Dahmer a picky eater. The dude was off his rocker, and hey, we've got millions in the bank and no concept of reality, why not go full batshit crazy? Speaking of bats, let's talk about the scientific endeavors. In his spare time between dodging imaginary assassins and playing local women to study their poop, yes, that actually happened, McAfee dabbles in the production of experimental antibiotics, because who's better to crack the medicine code than a guy who can't even keep track of the drugs he's on? Seriously, this guy had more chemicals running through his veins than the Flint water supply. He thought maybe he's curing diseases when in reality he was about one bad trip away from starting the next pandemic. Of course, McAfee didn't stop there. He was also, let's say, exploring alternative lifestyles. Enter the hammock story. Now, most people use hammocks for relaxing, maybe taking a nap, but not McAfee. No, McAfee had other plans. He hired local women, young, very young, to, let's say, assist him in his hammock-based endeavors. These women claimed he paid them to sit in the hammock, cut a hole in it, and well, let's just say the whole setup made Epstein's private island look like a Catholic church picnic, except in this case, the only thing getting blessed was McAfee's twisted idea of a good time. Then, things take an even darker turn. Darker than the hammock stuff. Enter Gregory Fowl, McAfee's neighbor. Fowl was just a regular guy trying to enjoy his beachfront property, but unfortunately for him, his next-door neighbor was running a one-man militia and experimenting with drugs like he was auditioning for Breaking Bad, Belize edition. Fowl complained about McAfee's pack of wild dogs, probably after they chewed through his fence one too many times, and in a completely unrelated turn of events, Fowl ends up dead, shot in the head, execution style. Naturally, McAfee claims innocence. I didn't do it, he says, while stroking one of his AK-47s, sweating like he's about to get caught in a police lineup. Of course, McAfee, being the genius that he is, doesn't stick around to answer too many questions. Nope, he bolts like Epstein when the feds come knocking, except, you know, McAfee's still alive, allegedly. He flees Belize, starts a game of international hide-and-seek, and somehow thinks he can lay low in Guatemala because nothing screams innocent like hopping from one corrupt Central American country to another. It's like he was trying to do the Pablo Escobar world tour, but this time with a lot worse planning and more yoga. He even fakes a heart attack to avoid extradition, because when in doubt, just pretend you're dying. It's basically the rich guy version of throwing a tantrum in a grocery store. The best part? He was caught because Vice posted a picture of him online with the GPS coordinates still embedded in the file. That's right, John McAfee, the guy who built $1 billion company around cybersecurity, gets caught because of a damn photo tag. It's like if Jeff Bezos got scammed by a Nigerian princess email. The irony here is thicker than the walls of the Guatemalan prison he should have ended up in. Now, McAfee got Belizean authorities after him, the US government breathing down his neck, and he's still on the run. But what's his next move? Oh, you know, he decides to run for president. Because why not? If you can dodge murder charges, avoid paying taxes, and still keep a straight face while talking about freedom, you might as well shoot for the highest office in the land. At this point, the only thing crazier than his life would have been if he won. It's June 23rd, 2021, and John McAfee is found dead in a Spanish prison cell, just hours after the court approved his extradition to the US for tax evasion charges. Yeah, tax evasion. After dodging accusations of murder, running a Central American drug-fueled circus, and turning his life into an international game of Where's Waldo, it's taxes that finally take him down. Because two things are sure in this world, and that's death in taxes. And McAfee found that one out quick. If that's not the most ironic twist of this whole mess, I don't know what is. McAfee evaded more countries than most of us have stamps in our passports, but good old Uncle Sam gets him on taxes because, like herpes, the IRS never really goes away. Now, the official story says suicides. Supposedly, McAfee hanged himself with his prison bedsheet. Sounds familiar. But let's be real, this is John McAfee we're talking about. The guy had been claiming for years that if he was ever found dead in a cell, it wasn't suicide. In fact, he had a tattoo on his arm that read $whacked. You know, like the crypto thing? I don't know what it's called. Because nothing says I'm not planning to kill myself like preemptively branding your body with a cryptic message in crypto code. It's like Epstein all over again, only instead of sex trafficking, we've got tax evasion and a lot more cocaine. Speaking of Epstein, the parallels are, well, too good to ignore. Both guys were rich, both had some seriously questionable lifestyles, and both mysteriously died in their cells just when things were about to get real. Coincidence? I mean, come on, Epstein didn't kill himself, and everyone knows that, and neither did McAfee. At least, that's the theory that a solid chunk of the internet is running with. McAfee's death lit up conspiracy forums like a Christmas tree at a meth house. Was he silenced by the US government? Did the Belizean hit squad finally catch up to him? Or, my personal favorite, is he alive and hiding out with Tupac and Elvis, sipping cocktails on an island with zero extradition laws? Of course, the Spanish prison authorities are sticking to the suicide story. I mean, the CIA probably forced them to. They say he was depressed and that his life on the run had finally caught up with him. But this is a guy who once bragged about outsmarting the entire US government and still had enough energy to troll people on Twitter from his jail cell. Depressed? Maybe, but the kind of guy to go out quietly? Not a chance. McAfee was a man who lived his life as if every day was a dare. If he was gonna go out, it would have been with fireworks, not a sad little bedsheet. His widow, Janice McAfee, doesn't buy it either. She's been vocal about how John wasn't suicidal and how he was looking forward to fighting the extradition charges. And to be honest, she might have a point. This is the same guy who escaped Belize by faking a heart attack and did interviews from yachts while being hunted by the IRS. McAfee wasn't the type to just give up because things got tough. In fact, he thrived on chaos. And you could say he was addicted to it. The more insane and intense his life became, the more alive he seemed. And so, the legend of John McAfee doesn't end neatly with his death. In fact, it's just the beginning of another chapter in the crazy saga. Whether he's dead, hiding out on an Epstein-level island, or trolling us from the afterlife, one thing's for sure: McAfee lived and died mostly on his own terms. And every Bitcoin surge is a coded message from McAfee's ghost, because in the end, even death can't contain the madness that was John McAfee.